Welcome back to Rink Rap on Forever Blueshirts. I am Jim Cerny, and that guy right there is the busiest man in hockey. He is not Gary Bettman. He is Marty Biron. But this guy, let's see, I can't even go down your whole list here. TSN, doing the Sabres broadcast tonight, NHL Network Radio, and he squeezes some time in for his friends as well. So thank you so much for a few minutes today, Marty.
Listen, it's a few days before the trade deadline. I think there's more busy people than I am. All the insiders are probably on their phones. Like screen time has to be like 15 hours a day right now. I'm just, enjoying myself and talking hockey. What's wrong with that?
Come on. You're saying you're not an insider like Weeksy? You're not going to pop up on Twitter in all these different like crazy modes saying breaking?
No breaking news from the turnpike like Weeksy. But here's the funny thing. I said something last night. The Sabres were playing against Montreal on Monday night. I said something during the broadcast to the effect that, look, I don't know if, because the Sabres are having Bills night on Tuesday. So I'm like, I don't know if Dion Dawkins is going to be at the game. And I picked a Bills player. But it'd be fun. Like he's fun at the games. And then Brian Duff, our host, he goes, Marty, as an insider, you should never start a phrase with, I don't know. I'm like, I'm not an insider. I'm an outsider. So that's good.
You're an insider. You're an insider for us.
Well, good.
During your career, speaking of trade deadlines, you were moved just once during the season, right? Where you had to pick up.
I was only traded once, technically. It was from Buffalo to Philly. It was at the deadline because when I signed with the Islanders was free agent. When I signed with the Rangers was free agent. So only once in my career was I traded. I was traded in junior only once as well. And that was funny. That was while I was at the World Juniors. So I was traded in two like kind of very big circumstances. I was at the World Juniors with Team Canada in Switzerland. I woke up and, we get the yesterday's news basically on a sheet in the morning. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, last night, Marty Biron was traded from the Beauport Harfangs to the Hall Olympics. I'm like, hey, that's how I found out, guys. Like, and then obviously the trade deadline in 2007, I went from Buffalo to Philly.
Yeah. And of course, segueing into talking trade deadline and stuff, want to get your thoughts a little bit on what the Rangers have done so far. Of course, one of your buddies there in Buffalo was Chris Drury. You were teammates for a number of years, and you kind of reconnected at the end of his career when you came to New York as well, his final season with the Rangers. So you know the guy a little bit, maybe not as much as the GM as you knew him when he was a player. But all that said, what do you think of the job he's done this year? I think he's done a pretty good job threading a really difficult needle, retooling on the fly, trading your captain, really kind of changing the outlook of what your team is about, how they play and everything. What do you think about the job he's done so far?
So it's funny because years ago, when I was with the Rangers, Glenn Sader was our, general manager, and he used to always kind of joke, but it was serious, saying, I can't get rid of all you guys. So if I have to, I'll fire Torts, or I'll fire the trainers, or I'll fire the equipment managers, or because he basically said the players have all the leverage. They're there, they have the contracts, and it's hard to kind of make big changes in season on your roster. It's the first thing you usually look at when a team doesn't perform is coaching is going to get fired. Like you're going to get new coaches. And at some point early in the season, I thought, is this it? Does Peter Laviolette go now? Because the Rangers are definitely not playing well. I'm not saying they're playing at the highest of level right now, although back-to-back shutout is going to help, but there's still some holes. But what Chris Drury's done is basically saying, no, my coach is the coach I want. My coaching staff is the coaching staff I want. You guys, meaning the players, are the ones on the hot seat. And if you don't perform, Chris Kreider, and if you don't perform, anybody, really, that's what it is, like Ryan Lindgren or, Jacob Trouba, we're going to move you. We're going to move you. And that, he didn't move Chris Kreider, but there was a lot of rumors and a lot of talks around Chris Kreider. And then he brought in JT Miller, which I thought that was a genius move. At a time where the Vancouver Canucks were really struggling to figure out Miller, Pettersson, Miller. There's rumors on both. Rangers came in, made the biggest probably proposal. Miller had trade protection, wanted to go to New York, but what you did is you basically brought in a guy that is like, okay, this is our leader now. And Jim, I was there with the Rangers when JT Miller started.
Yeah.
JT Miller with the Rangers is not the JT Miller you're getting now with the Rangers. That is not the same person. That is not the same kid. He's learned a lot, and he came into New York and flipped a switch now as the leader. A lot of people are telling me that's the guy you need to build around. Look, you have Fox and you have Zibanejad and you have Panarin and but people in New York are saying Miller's the guy you need to build around. That's pretty significant.
So right now, there has been a massive shift since January 31st when he arrived. And I know the record is, I think there are only 3 games over 500 since he arrived. But you can see, if you watch this team on a regular basis, there is a total different commitment to playing a different style of game.
Yes.
So, yeah, the wins and losses, it's still working itself out and everything. But they're a vastly different team now. And I can't remember in a long time somebody that was acquired during the season before a trade deadline that made such a crazy instant impact on their team, because usually it's the opposite, right? Usually big players, big trades go down ahead of the deadline, and then it kind of falls flat a little bit during that season, and maybe the impact is felt down the road. I mean, this impact has been pretty immediate so far.
Yeah, and look, when you think of guys that really had an impact, I feel in a trade, like I go back to Marty Biron, right? I mean, when Biron got traded to the Rangers and his impact in a different way, I think JT Miller has more hockey to give than Marty did back then. But Marty coming in, look, that was a big trade. Ryan Callahan going the other way, very significant. But it's not like the Rangers didn't give up anything in the JT Miller trade. Like, I like Filipino. I think he's a really good player. Is he JT Miller? No. And is there, some injury issues? Absolutely. But you're going to make that commitment to acquiring a JT Miller. You're going to have to give up some pieces. And I do feel that the Rangers gave up enough. It wasn't probably full value because of the no movement clause and no trade clause on JT Miller, but it was enough. So yeah, it's a significant trade. And that doesn't happen that often. You get the rentals, you get the, like Jake Gensel last year, big trade for Carolina, but he's not going to be there long-term. And he wasn't. Right. He went to Tampa. Rantanen this year, big trade. Is Rantanen going to be in Carolina for, the next 4 or 5 seasons? We don't know. But I would think JT Miller is going to be in New York, and that's the guy that's going to be the leader and the catalyst to what they hope is success.
Yeah, and I think what Drury did that stands out to me is he improved the team for the immediate, but like you said, it's not a rental. We're talking about a guy that's going to be here for a while. Now, you can also argue the flip side of that could be, boy, the ends of that JT Miller contract may not look so pretty. In 4 or 5 years. I get that angle too. But there is an eye to the future here. But, the whole waiving Barclay Goodrow, trading Jacob Trouba, clearing cap space. I have felt all along this season, absolutely, Rangers want to make the playoffs. You got Igor, so you always feel like you got a chance come playoff time to make some semblance of a run. But that said, I've always felt that Drury's had his eye on next summer. Let's get our cap right before then. Let's free up as much money as possible. Let's move out, some of these UFAs that we're not going to re-sign, because he's got his eyes on bigger fish come the off season to get the same sense. I know it's hard to say because we're, like we talk about insiders, outsiders. We're a little bit more on the outside here, but do you kind of get that vibe that maybe that's, again, the needle he's trying to, or the hole he's trying to thread?
Well, and when you look at their contract situation, they do have Riley Smith, who's a UFA at the end of the year. But other than that, it's a lot of restricted free agent and some that I would think will stay. So, yeah, I think in the summertime, there may be more of hockey trades, but they did make a couple of big hockey trades anyway this year. It's
sure.
not just, for prospects and picks, and it was pretty significant. But the way I look at it, and maybe because I looked at it through the Sabres lens 2 months ago, the Sabres were maybe 4 or 5 points behind the New York Rangers. And I said, the Rangers are going to be a team that's going to be either a wild card team or just a point or two shy. If you can keep up with the Rangers in your points, keep yourself within striking distance of the Rangers, that would mean that for the Sabres, they would be right there at the end of the year fighting for a playoff spot. Right now, you look at the standings. I mean, the Rangers are 12 points ahead of the Sabres. So the Sabres have not kept up with the Rangers. But where are the Rangers? Exactly where I thought they were. They're tied right now with Detroit. Detroit has the, point percentage, but they're tied. But they're only 6 points behind the Devils.
Yep.
That is significant.
Yep.
I don't think Chris Drury is saying we're going to get in as a wild card. The injury to Jack Hughes, the fact that Jacob Markstrom missed some times, it's almost like they're looking at the Devils and we could get in as the number 3 in the Metro and really earn our stripes going into the playoffs. That to me is where this next few weeks here is going to be interesting when you look at the Rangers, not just a wild card with Detroit and Columbus. It's chase the New Jersey Devils if you can.
Yep. And it's so funny you said that because I wrote that this morning. Exactly that. It's not only 6 points, but it's a game in hand. And
Yep.
I get it. I know Adam Fox is out, for a longer term, but that Jack Hughes injury could be a crusher for the Devils. And the thing has been, you talk about teams kind of heading in opposite ways. The Rangers, certainly since the new year, have been trending up. The Devils have been the exact opposite. That great start to the season, the Markstrom injury didn't help. That's a team that's coming the other way. So now the Rangers have the game in hand, and I think all bets are off. I think you're spot on with that the sights are set higher, and it's always been there for the Rangers because even when they were 4-15-0, Marty, they never fell more than 5 points out of a playoff. Yeah. They were always right there. Nobody was running away from them,
That's what a good start of the season will do, right? They put some points in the bank, and then when they struggled, they at least had that to back them up. But I love also, look, Jonathan Quick has a shutout a couple games ago. He made that unbelievable save with the stick behind the back. It was crazy. And Igor Shesterkin is like, hold my beer. And then Igor says, I'm good. But that's what happened last year too. Igor didn't have the best start of the season, and Jonathan Quick really kept the Rangers alive until Igor was like, okay, now I'm ready to go. And Igor in the second half last year was spectacular, and you have that guy. I know, the track record of the Cups over the last few years, bearing Bobrovsky winning last year, but you did have Aiden Hill and Darcy Kemper, and you had some guys that you're like, are they top of the league type goaltenders? No. Well, before that was Vasilevsky, but I still think you give yourself your best chance of winning if you have one of those top guys. Rangers have it with Shesterkin. Florida, Tampa have it with Bobrovsky and Vasilevsky. Not Columbus, Winnipeg has it with Hellebuck. Dallas has it with Ottinger. Those are the teams that at the end of the day, I'm saying, I'm looking at those teams because they have the goaltending.
So that's interesting because I was going to ask you about Shesterkin's season. I see parallels to last year, kind of inconsistent regular season. This year he's had some unbelievable, brilliant moments where the Rangers have been run out of building. It's like Keystone Cops in the defensive zone, and he's standing on his head, keeping him in games, right? But there have been other games where, okay, maybe they haven't been great in front of him, but he wasn't making that, like you did saw in the playoffs last year and in the past with him, where you say, well, the team's flailing, but there's Igor, So there's been a little inconsistency there. And of course, we judge him on such an incredibly high level as well.
Yes.
But that said, I think maybe you in part answered the question, but what do you make of his season so far? And I take it that you have massive confidence in him going down the stretch here.
Yeah, I have no worries about Igor Shesterkin, although he had a couple of tough games against the Sabres this year. We got pulled twice, right? And you're like, I'm pumping his tires. And then, Sabres fans here are like the Sabres made him look average. And I'm like, okay, like when it matters, Igor shows up, and he's the reason why he signed a big contract and making the big bucks, because in my book, he's the best goaltender in the National Hockey League, the guy that I would want. Am I saying he's having the best season this year? No. I think Connor Hellebuyck's having the best season. I think Logan Thompson's having a better season. I think Lucas Dostal in Anaheim's having a better season, but I still would pick Igor Shesterkin over all of these guys because I know what I'm going to get. And that to me is why the Rangers are never out of it. Look, Dominik Hasek in Buffalo was the guy that was behind a team that struggled, that, would get outshot sometime 40-18 in a game and would win 3-2 or 2-1. And They even went to a Stanley Cup final on the backs of Dominik Hasek. I think the Rangers can obviously go to a Stanley Cup final and maybe even win the Stanley Cup because of Igor Shesterkin. Now, other parts are going to have to get going. And their defensive structure worries me because they can give up a lot of chances, and now you rely on Shesterkin so much. But they can still get there because Igor can get hot for 20 games and be unbeatable in the spring.
So I want to circle back again a little bit more of the NHL trade deadline and talk about something I saw that you, I think it was on TSN, something you mentioned. You talked about Jordan Binnington and the possibility of him getting traded. I want to get to that, but since we've been out talking about the Rangers trade deadline, being the new guy coming to a team, talking about great goalies and everything, it just brought me to your relationship with Henrik when you came to the Rangers. And I saw it, fortunately I worked for the team. I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of an insider's, view, but certainly, not with the players, not knowing all the ins and outs. But from the outside, it seemed like it took a little bit of time to build that relationship.
Yep.
And, you're such a, big personality, friendly with everybody, outgoing, but yet you kind of had to work your way because that was Henrik's team. And he was the goalie and everything. Yep. I wonder if you could walk me through that, because I know in your later stages of your time with the Rangers, you guys were tight. We'd see you guys on the plane and you'd be watching. Yep. I think it was Friday Night Lights that one year. You binge watched.
Yeah, we watched a lot of TV shows, but that you're 100%, Jim. It took, I would say, a year. My first year with the Rangers, we were partners. And look, I was just coming 2 years before that. I was the starting goalie with the Flyers, playing against Henrik as, that matchup between the Rangers and the Flyers. And I was the guy at the one end. He was the guy at the other end. And then I had the year with the Islanders, but I came into the Rangers and I knew what my role was. I knew what I was coming to do, being Henrik's backup backup and supporting him. I don't know that he knew that, in the sense that the 2009-10 season, they lose the last game in a shootout to the Flyers. Right. It wasn't the best of season for Henrik. So I come in and I think he thought, who's this guy? Like, is he trying to steal my job here? Is he trying to make a comeback? And not that he ever said that, but it was a respect. We do our job. And then my second year, the very first road trip where we got on the plane, I remember thinking, okay, where am I going to sit on the plane this year? And then I walked in and there was a seat right open next to Hank. And that was Mark Stahl's seat. But Mark didn't start the season because he had the concussion the year before. And so I said to Hank, this open? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. And I sat with him on the plane the whole season. And we watched TV shows together, movies together. We talked about, the games. He used to get so frustrated because I would be able to just disconnect. The game's over, I'm over, right? And he would hang on to it for the longest time. And, I remember on the plane one time, he's like, how do you do it? Like, how did I do what? He goes, I'm so mad. Like, we shouldn't have lost this game today. And I'm like, there's tomorrow. Tomorrow's another day. Let's plug in the computer and let's watch a show and forget about it. He's like, okay, let's give it a try. And so, and then we stayed like airplane buddies, and we would drive together. Because then my third year, I moved in the city, and I was literally 2 blocks from Hank's place. So
Right.
I would drive him to the practice rink or the airport. And so, but it took a year to build that up. And that chemistry, that relationship between goalies is very important. We're seeing it with Quick and Shesterkin,
For
right?
sure.
And that's great. And we're seeing it in Long Island with Sorokin and Varlamov. But is it the same? And does it have the same impact everywhere else? I think when you find it, it's special. And yeah, we had something special in New York for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's great because it takes me back to that time, and it just kind of confirms what I thought I remembered seeing. That it took a while.
I used to yell at him in practice because I was like older, and I want to get off the ice, and I have to go get the kids at school and all of that. And Hank is taking a million shots after practice and breakaways, and I'm like, hey, get off the ice. I can't leave until you leave. And he's like, I'll take 5 more. And he's taking 25 more. I'm like, get off the ice. Like, but that's how much fun we had in the relationship, that we were able to tell each other, straightforward, like things like that, which was great.
How long did it take you to learn? Probably the answer's going to be real quick. That you didn't talk to him in between periods, and he wanted nothing. He didn't want to hear from you or anybody between
he did let me talk to him once in a while, certain moments, but I also knew if he put the towel over his head in between periods, I went for a walk. I would go for a walk. I'd give him his space. Now that's at MSG where we're sitting next to each other. On the road, often we wouldn't sit next to each other because sometimes the goalie stalls are opposite ends of the room. But at MSG, I would know, just like let him be, right? If he wanted to talk, or if he wanted to go over certain things, he would ask. I'd sit there. I wouldn't engage. He would ask. We'd talk. But you're right. Most times it was towel over the head, and he's focused and he's ready. And so I would go and hang out in the trainer's room with, with everybody out there. And Rammer was there and Brucey were there. We'd just hang out. I'd go in the back with Cass and just hang out with him, because that's where I had the most fun.
So, I mean, not that this is a stunning story, because it was Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2014. Rangers lose double overtime. Alec Martinez, game winner, yada, yada. We all know the story. They didn't open up the Rangers locker room probably for 45, 50, 55 minutes after the game ended. As well, they shouldn't, And as a reporter, man, that's a tough go to walk into a room. Team just lost the Stanley Cup. So we walk in, and, I've known Henrik for years at that point, throughout his whole career. And I came in and my heart broke. He is sitting in his stall. He's in full equipment. And when I mean full equipment, the pads are still on. The mask is still perched on top of his head. It's not over his face, but it's on top of his head. And his hands are folded. And he's just staring, looking at the floor. And I'm like, what am I going to ask this guy that's going to, be meaningful, or, but God bless him, for the next 15, 20 minutes, he answered every question anybody had and everything. Good. I know that's a side story to
I remember it well, because I was covering the finals with NHL Network that year, and we were on the balcony out at Staples Center at the time, like Crypto.com Center, whatever. And we're on the back balcony, and we're waiting for locker room sound, right? We're waiting to do a post game on NHL Network, and it took forever. Although we weren't really focusing on the Rangers, but we wanted Rangers sound. We were focusing more on the Kings, who had won. But I remember very well seeing him, and also seeing him, the next year, having that look in his eye, I can't believe we let that go. Unfortunately, they never had that chance to go back, and that's tough. But that year, and for me, the Adam Henrique goal in overtime, Game 6 in the conference final, 2 years prior to that, in 2012.
Yep.
That was one where I remember looking at him in the locker room, and he was absolutely crushed. And there was a lot of players in that locker room that were crushed, but he was, out of everyone, the one that looked like he had just lost a part of his soul. And that's why I knew like he's a winner in my book and he's such a competitor. But it was emotional, it was personal for him, right? And losing in the game 6 to the Devils that year was significant.
Yep, Adam Henrik, remember it well.
Hate him for that.
Okay, real quickly, we'll bring it, but that was great. I loved, going back and sharing those memories and getting your take. Real quickly, you mentioned Binnington on TSN, whether it was today or yesterday, and you think there's a really good chance that he could get traded. So here's the deal. Like, I get the theory behind St. Louis saying, hey, probably get the biggest return ever for Jordan Binnington right now. Cup winner. Now he's, the other cup, a couple weeks ago.
4 Nations. Is it a cup? Is it a trophy? It's the face-off, but I get what you're saying.
Right, exactly. But now's the time to do it if you're going to do it, probably. But where's the fit, Marty? Like, I would say Edmonton, but how do they work that in? Especially
if you go to the Oilers, look, Jordan Binnington still has 2 more years left at $6 million. I think the Oilers can get it done, but the way I mentioned it on TSN was, I think he's probably the best available goaltender, especially if you're looking at winning big games. And the Oilers lost Game 7 last year, and Jordan Binnington doesn't lose Game 7s, right, in the Stanley Cup Final. He won it in Boston. He won the 4 Nations face-off with a big performance in that game. So I'm saying the Oilers could say the one thing we were missing last year was a goalie to win us that Game 7. Who's the one guy that can do it? Jordan Binnington. The problem is the Blues are like in the middle of a playoff push themselves.
Right.
And I think Binnington's the guy. And so maybe it's dreaming if you're an Oilers fan to say, oh, maybe we can get Binnington. I don't know that the Blues will want to do it. But the Oilers would probably throw a pretty nice package at it. And look, probably Stuart Skinner would go to St. Louis. Right. It's not like Stuart Skinner is going to fail. Maybe that's good for him, in doing it. I think John Gibson is the one goalie for me that makes so much sense about getting traded. The Anaheim Ducks are technically in the race, but no, they're not going to make it. And Lucas Dostal has been the guy. Yeah. John Gibson has been rumored for now 5 years as a guy that maybe go. I think the Anaheim Ducks would want to do him a favor and say, okay, we have our number 1 goalie. Let's move you now. He still has 2 years left to his deal. So, but the thing with the Oilers, if you make that move, you probably keep Stuart Skinner because you're going to probably go Skinner, Gibson. You guys compete. You guys go. And Gibson has some injury issues, so you want to keep yourself an insurance policy. But maybe that's the move the Oilers would do. Say, hey, you know what? Let's acquire a guy like John Gibson. Or my other destination for John Gibson was maybe Pittsburgh. And I know Rangers fans are going to say, well, that affects us because in the future, Tristan Jarry's not worked there. And they tried Nedeljkovic and Blomqvist, and it's not working. They need somebody in that. They need to tell Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Erik Karlsson, if they're still there, but I would assume yes, that, okay, we'll get you a goalie. John Gibson is from Pittsburgh, and 2 years, that kind of fits the need there. Somebody to close the gap until somebody else comes along. But I think John Gibson is going to be on the move. I think the Blues keep Jordan Binnington, but that's not for a lack of offers and phone calls that they would be fielding.
Quick one. Are you surprised how well Mackenzie Blackwood has played since the trade to Colorado and then landed the, long-term extension as well? They signed him pretty quickly after picking him up.
No, I'm not surprised. When healthy, Mackenzie Blackwood has all the tools. He's very athletic, moves well, has got great size. I mean, we all saw it, right, in Jersey and whatnot. Like, he does have the pedigree and the tools. The injuries have been tough. And he played so well in San Jose on a bad team early, despite not winning a lot of games. I felt he's given himself a chance. He is, betting on himself and let's go. And Colorado saw exactly what a lot of people would see. But Colorado was the first team to say, we're going to address this. Because that's 2 years now with Georgiev. It wasn't working, and Justus Annunen. So they incredibly, they revamped their crease, both goaltenders. And I'm not surprised that Mackenzie Blackwood is going to be in the conversation for the Olympics for Team Canada next year. I do believe if they had picked the Four Nations team in middle of January instead of, at the end of November, probably would have been 3 different goalies. It would have been Thompson, Mackenzie Blackwood, and Darcy Kemper instead of Binnington, Montembeault, and Hill.
Right.
It worked for Canada, but I think Mackenzie Blackwood has played that well that he'll be considered next year too.
Good stuff. Marty Biron, I know you got a game tonight. You got to prep for it. You got to rest those pipes of yours and everything.
It's been the struggle. I'll tell you this. I got sick at Christmas and it's come and gone, but the doctors gave me lots of good drugs. It's getting better now. So I can be ready for a full day Friday for trade deadline, and keep an eye on Chris Drury. I'll keep an eye on the insiders, the real insiders, the Pierre LeBrun and Bob McKenzie and Darren Drager and Chris Johnson that are going to be in the studio with me. I'll look over their shoulders, and if I see something interesting, I'll text you.
So that, first of all, love that. See, you're my insider then. But what you need to do here's my pro tip to you. While you're on camera, you don't have to do it when you're not on camera, but when you're on camera, make sure you're looking down and everybody can see your hand holding the phone and just be tapping away like that.
Yeah. What's going on? Yeah. Like you just pretend like, and people are talking to you and you're like zone them out, even though you hear them, but you're really into your phone, and that's the way to do it.
Right. And maybe have your phone ding or whatever, like ask your wife to hey, every 15 minutes or so, make sure you text me, Marty, we need eggs and milk, or whatever she needs to tell you. I'll tell
Jacob to do that. Jacob is he's so funny, and quickly, because Jacob was 6, 7, 8 years old when I played in New York with the Rangers. He's now 20 playing at West Point, and
awesome.
Friday during the day, they're going to get ready for a playoff game at Niagara, but he sometimes he'll text me. He goes, "Hey, did you see this so-and-so got traded?" Like, that's my job. Like, I've seen it. Yes, I knew that was happening. But he's my assistant. And in a few years, I'll tell you this now. The way that it's going, this kid will be either a GM or a president of an organization, because he's wired that way and he's smart. And so he's my assistant now. And I hope I'll be writing his coattails in the future, because he's going to make himself a name in the hockey world.
Well, see, you could really become an insider then, because for whatever team he's working for, he's like, "Hey, Dad, listen, we're working on a left shot D," and then Marty goes out there and says, "Hey, Team X is."
He'll use me to put it out there so it creates the buzz. That's what part of being an insider is, knowing when to give anybody favors. It's a quick pro quo kind of like job right there.
Yeah, Jake, tying this all together before we let Marty go. Jacob Biron, when he was 6, 7, outdoors in Philadelphia, practice day before the Winter Classic. And, we got Henrik to come over. Henrik's being besieged by, he's doing one interview after another, but he does one for us because we're the local team. We're the Rangers. We'll do it for the Rangers website. And hey, we're not going to have Jim do the interview. We're going to have Jacob Biron do it instead. Yeah. So Henrik, being the good guy that he is, sure, 3, 4 questions, whatever. And then Jacob sets him up and says, "Okay, here's my final question, Hank," calling him Hank. Yeah. "Hank, here's my final question." Ask the question. And then Henrik kind of straightens up and is about to pat him on the back, ready to go. And Jacob says, "And my next question is," and sticks the microphone in Hank's face. But Henrik rolled with it. Good man.
Yeah, no, he did. He was awesome. Derek Stepan was fantastic with him as well. Yeah, I remember Matt Zuccarello was having so much fun with Jacob on the ice during at the training center. But we watched that over Christmas because he was back in town. The kids were all here. We were looking at old videos and we pulled those up, those old Biron's journals that Jacob was a big part of.
That's it. And just so you know, this is just for you. I found this. I was looking for a hat. I don't know if you can see it here. To go walk my dog this morning before I took a shower. Sparta Praha.
Oh yeah, that was. I had a shutout there. I think I had a shutout there, and then I proceeded to give up like 9 goals in Zug, a little later. But when we went out to Europe, I think we won 2-0 against that team, and that was our first preseason game up there.
Well, I'm just glad that you guys didn't get burned alive, because if you remember, they had those torches right by the ice. And as the Spartans from Prague came out on the ice, they were just shooting these flames up everywhere. I'm like, this is dangerous stuff going on.
Jim, I'll tell you this. The biggest worries we had, we were in Prague for 4 days before that game. And we had quite some late dinners. And it's early in training camp. I was worried the alcohol that was pouring out of our pores was going to catch on fire. That's why we played so well. We took care of ourselves good.
Oh, Marty, great stuff, man. I can't believe it's taken so long to get you on the show. I really appreciate it. I could crush you and keep you on for hours, but you actually have work to do tonight. You got a Sabres game. So from here, I say thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Anytime. And maybe we'll do it again in the playoffs. Rangers make the playoffs. Let's revisit it maybe after round 1 and see how they go.